I consolidated these ISO essentials for easier access and reference, and I incorporated relevant learnings from my postdoctoral studies to contribute to the continuous improvement of our beloved school. Things that I will be discussing in this recording include the EOMS clause. So why are we doing the EOMS manual? I also included here in the change management that's happening in our organization and what the workforce would expect out of this change management. The quality assurance team understands that for you to understand, accept, and apply the changes happening in our ISO journey, you need to understand the concepts of change management. So, change management is the structured way of guiding people from the processes to the systems, from the current stage to the future stage. So let me discuss the challenges that we may encounter along the way, along with the possibilities when implementing change management for you to fully understand your engagement in these activities and also for you to see yourself in the process and to avoid the challenges and to avoid being the challenge of the entire process. So let me share my screen. So this will be a very short discussion for us to implement change management better. So organizational change fails not due to poor ideas, but due to the complexity of execution involving people, processes, and the systems. So sometimes there is this knowing doing gap in implementing change management. So when does this happen? It's when people invest heavily in strategy design, but breaks down in the actual execution. So sometimes they have consultants, so they invest in planning sessions. They do have vision setting, but plans that are too high level make the execution break down. And sometimes the employees do not understand what changes for them, or sometimes in this knowing doing gap, leaders assume that there is an alignment established, but they do not verify if actually what they want to convey is what was captured by the rest of the workforce. Also, in the change management, there's this concept of change being multidimensional and not linear. So we have to acknowledge that the organizational change that is happening is not just one action, but simultaneously affects our structure, our culture, the processes, and our system. So when we say structure, this involves the roles and the reporting lines in our organization, the culture, the mindsets, and the behaviors of everyone in it, the processes, how work gets done, and the systems, which includes the tools and technology. Also, in change management, we have to acknowledge that human behavior is the biggest execution risk. Why? Because people sometimes have this fear of the unknown. Sometimes they do not have the proper or sufficient competence to execute the change or to manage the change that is happening around them. And sometimes it's because of their habits or the comfort with their current processes. So people comply outwardly as a result, but they do not internalize the system. And we are cognizant of that. Sometimes also leadership alignment is weaker than assumed. So we may agree in meetings, but we differ in priorities in the actual scenario, or we interpret the strategy differently, or we do have varying or differing commitment levels. Also, in implementing change management, execution really requires discipline and not just vision. So this is why we started deploying or assigning KPIs. And it's better if you will be having regular milestone tracking, review cadences, and accountability systems. Moreover, it's good to know that in implementing change management, such as implementing ISO, complexity increases the risk of failure. So the larger the organization is, the more complex the change expected is. Why? Because the more complex the organization is, the more stakeholders that you have, the more dependencies that are taking place, and the more resistance points that are expected. Also, sustainability is the real measure of success in conducting change management. So many organizations implement change, but revert back after a few months. We hope that will not happen in our organization. And this revert to the old ways happened because there is no reinforcement, no integration into performance systems, and no cultural embedding. And this is why we keep on telling that we need to have reinforcement, we need to have controls in the organization, and we need to have performance systems. Lastly, let us not treat change management as a project, but a capability mindset. So let's not treat it as a one-time project that ends at a specific point, rather an exercise for us to strengthen our capabilities. So when we recognize ourselves in the matters being discussed, we hope we become more inclined to take responsibility and act. So thank you very much.